page 9. Dumba Jumden de Java da Jumba Yanda Brazobe Sangerik Shabjo Demba Deura Shaban Jiden Kimba Giwon Duve Kalon Yuwa Lanam Lada Minam Ge Dumba Sange Jumden de Bejawa Shajadu Chadalo Jodon Jabdun Che Dumba Jumden de Java da Jum Bozobe Sangerik Bada Shabjo Demba Deura Shaban Jiden Kimba Giwon Duve Kalon Yuwa Lanam Lada Minam Ge Dumba Sange Jumden de Bejawa Shajadu Bala Chad Chodo Jabzun Che Dumba Jumden de Java da Jumba Yanda Brazobe Yubada Shabjo Demba Deura Shaba Jiden Kimba Giwon Duve Kalo Yuwa Lanam Lada Minam Ge Dumba Sange Jumden de Bejawa Shajadu Chadalo Chodo Jabzun Che Ganje Ganye Zowo Jadamaji Sajen de la Gumbon de Bone Mane Jigden de Naju Tete Geba Jola Chai Zalo Namda Puma Shoto Susanwa Yishen Jazu Se Dan Dobo Jide Sumna Lamewa Gumbo Chenyen Jola Chai Chenzo Demba Dimen Dave Sho Sedo Dobo Jola Chai Yuda Yuda Seba Suma She Yame Chechen Jola Chai Gumbo Duje Chechen Ba Damje Kimbe Dumba Sona Yunde Nyazo She Deshe Jola Chai Daten Dojan Dewan Yuan Gyumed Ngeson Le Doshi Chido Danta Chejo Ba Shinjo Jola Chai Dono Dure Lamyante Alaba Dala Shingya Namba Yunde Chojo Gin Zalo Sange Zalo Gyoba Chola Cha Gyumed Dela Cha Zalo Sula Tabu Puja Santa Opa Tamjela Shindo Kunge Danyege Ludo Paye Nambu Shodo Debe Chado Dikwa Chiyam Mijaje Gyoba Puzo Ange Semjo Yosodo Demye Sange Dembaye Kamara Be Mamed Yuma Sebe Chowada Milma Loda Dikwa Duje Chunam Deta Solomon Deye Tamje Sikwaye Gopal Tenye Junge Dade Shibe Labdube Sibe Sorendo Yorai Sho Sonra da şöyle mandala. Döngürüm. Şernim. So we're going to do the Heart Sutra. Baba Gunjo Son La Sha Sado Dege Dage Toba Duje Na Chumden Ge Jabu Jabu Pumbo De La Gyulong Ge Gende Chumbo Da Chanjo Se Chumbo Da Tachi Do Shu De De Che Chumden De Samo Na Wa She Jabe Chuge Nam Dan Ge Tengen Je La Myongbra Shu So Yan De Che Chumjo Sembo Baba Je De Se Honjo Shera Ge Paro Do Chimba Samo Joba Ni La Nambra Da Shen Pumbo Ma Wo De Da La Ya La Shi Ge Tongba Nambra Dene Sange Ge Tu Je Da Demba Shere Chanjo Semba Semba Chimbo Baba Je De Se Honjo La Di Ge Je Me Dege Bo Kan La La Shera Ge Paro Do Chim Samo Joba Jobra Do Ba De Chi Da La Bra Sha Di Ge De Me Ba Da Chanjo Semba Chimbo Baba Je De Se Honjo Ge Te Da Demba Shere Bo La Di Ge Je Me Su Shere Bo Rege Bo Ma Kan La La Shera Ge Paro Do Chimba Samo Jobra Do Ba De De Da Nambra Da Wa Cha De Humbo Ma Wa De Kanshi Ge Tongba Nambra Yanda Bra Je Su Da Wu Su Do Ko Tongba Ni Su Do Su Le Tongba Ni Le Ja Su Je Ma Ye No De Jin Do Tso Wa Dan Du Xie Da Nambra She Ba Na Tongba Wu She De Wu De Chodam Je Tongba Ni De Tsen Je Me Ba Ma Ge Ba Ma Wa Wa Ti Ma Me Ba Ti Ma Da Jo Wa Ti Wa wa me ba ho shere bo de da wa na tong ba ni la su me to je me tu je na me na bra she wa me mi me na wa me na me je me lu me yi me su me da me ro me ri ja me che me do mi ge ka me ba me yi ge ka me yi ge na bra she be ka ge me do ma re ba se ba me ba ne ta she me ba she se be ba do ya me do de je do so ma wa ku jo wa da bo ba da la me yi she me to ba me ma do ba ya she re bo de da wa na chang ju se ba na to ba me be che che ye chen ba la den je ne de sem la ti ba me be da ba me de chin je lo le shin do de ne na nge le a shin do du so do na bro shu be san ge tam je ja sha chen ba la de ne la na me ba ya da ba zo be san ju do mo ba zo ba san ge zo de da wa na sha ge pa ro do chin be ma la na la me be ma mi nya ba da nya be ma do ma dan je da do shi wa che be ma mi do ba na de ba shi wa shi ra ge pa ro do chin be ma me ba ta ya ta ka de pa ya sam ba de bu de ye so shi ra go chen ju sem ba chen bu de da shi ra ge pa ro do chin ba sam ma la ba ra cha wo de ne jum de ding ge de le shin de chen ju sem ba chen bu pa ba shi de se o jo la le so she ja wa shi ne le so ri ge ko de shin no de shin de ra shi ge de ba shin do shi ra ge chen ba sam mo de de she ja wa na de ju so ye ra mo chum de ge de ka sa ne se da de ba shi de bu da chen ju sem ba ko ba de o jo da ta ma de da de be ko ro de da ha da mi da ha ma yi da ji da ji be ji de ye sun de ye sun ba la mo mo de ka la je be ne jo da ba de mo ji do do ma ye do ba mo la ma ye bu ji se no da ha do cho la cha za lo aka sa ma ra ta cha sa ma ra ya Om Gade para Sangha de Budi Soha Baba Kunjo Sunge Taye Dembe Toki Cher Nawajuji Dagya Pachame Dembe Chere Nyamba Tamje Shindo Kore Soha Ngere Donda Akya Jushi Medu Ndada Demda Ndawa Tomba Duje Kuzocho Taje Denja Dende Mandala offering. So we have many people gathered here together. So I would like to greet all of them. With touch the lip. So the purpose, the reason why sentient beings are circling or wandering in cycle existence is because of not realizing emptiness. So in order, one has to realize emptiness in order to abandon the cycle existence. It is difficult to realize the emptiness, but without that, there is no way one can free oneself from cycle existence. So if one wishes to be free from cycle existence, then one must realize the emptiness. And so the root of the cycle existence, is the grasping that has the self-existence. And so you have to realize the wisdom, that is the opposite, contradicting, from that grasping at self-existence, so grasping at selflessness. And so that is that is what one has to realize. And there are many different methods, or many different ways, that has been taught, to realize the emptiness, or to explain about emptiness.
너무 도망이 있어야지 지라다 개미 차대리 지단의 시험 시장 너무 열어 이거 내담데 요리 세리 요리 내들이 그냥 모시 요리 그래서 다들 멍쳐지 가시는 왜 시들이 그냥 마신 이거리 시를 부족해나 자요리 마신나 이거리 이제 리베나스야 로들이 리베나 오요로 사리강들이 뭐요 저희가 계속 지라래 시를 부여요 지라래 그리고 시나 야보시라래 포도시라 연구하래 라마 병이라 병이래 그리고 마시나 양 공유대 영화하고 마시나고 대만이 사실 뭐지 제가 손이 돈이 돈으로 쉬는 지는 누르고 다 다리를 열어 다 동안이 있어도 막거나 거기가 다 거기 동도 말고 수치인도 이거 말이야 동안도 그 동안 보고 거기 방고 거기 말이 방고 말이 왜 나도 세고 그래 동이 뜻이라 계속 사도 해야지.
So there are so many different ways, that is the many different ways that one can realize emptiness, and many different essential keys explained, to realize emptiness. Of course, it's very good to know all of them, but it's not necessary to know all of them. So if you don't know this way, you can go other way to realize emptiness. And so the most important thing is to realize emptiness. Without realizing that, and there's no way one can be free from the suffering. And so if one wishes to be free from suffering, one wishes to be free from the sufferings and cycle existence, then one has to eliminate the cause that give rise to these sufferings and cycle existence. And the cause is the ignorance. And the only way to eliminate the ignorance is by realizing emptiness.
밀을 봐마지 출을 봐게니 다저기 밀을 세토요래 출을 버리 명고에 내다이 대지 뭐 다들은 말로 알아봐 저람 더밤에 봐 출들면 다르셔 누구여나 누토야기 대켜버리 도요래.
And also most of us here have achieved the perfect human rebirth, and the human rebirth, not just human rebirth, but human rebirth with all the leisures and endowments, to practice Dharma. So, of course, if one doesn't practice, then doesn't practice, one will not achieve anything. But if one practices, one has the leisure and the endowments, to do the practice.
그래서 상에서 뭐지 술 먹지다 요래. 주다 좀 먹어야면 술 먹지다 저요래. 나보다 예배 사이 세계 두배서 받은 제요래.
And also, we have met, with the teachings of the Buddha. There are so many different teachings, among them the teachings of the Buddha, and also there are many different traditions of Buddha's teaching. Anyway, in short, we have met with the teachings of the Buddha.
지난주에 나한테 베난다 아메리카다고 지열 먹어질라. 아마 사이제 사게 예주도 있나. 사게도 못 다리 아마 너무 먹어야 돼. 아마다 야가다네. 야밥이 유당 가져 놓고 세상 협용 와와. 다 계속 뛰고 왕이 저 담배 치우지 편하고 그래. 다 양이 약간 하고만 쳐지네 야구시라래. 초지는 정말이 초지 당연히 bil 보고제 야나방 뭔가 야나다 소보다데 담배 쉬지요래. 보는 담배 쉬다요래. 야나 쉬지 따르는 마냥 양양양양이지. 이게라지 야나다 되는 보르페 다 보라다게 양 자체의 유지 사만야라지 차도요에 조지다요.
And so, like in America, there's a very vast huge area that the teachings of Buddha is not spread in every part of America. And so, but there are in many parts of America where the teachings of the Buddha is available, but not in every part. So just like in India also, it's a very big area. So even though it's called the land of the nobles, the Arya nobles, but it is also because it's a very big area, so not only every part of the India there is a teaching spread. And anyway, so from India they went to many different places, like went to China, and then came to Tibet, and it flourished in Tibet a lot. But then recently or later it degenerated, and then there have been some problems now, and because of that there's no much teachings going on there.
뭐지 상계 담아야 바지 영어로야지 그 심정이 내가 되게 오차들 소수 심정이 내가 심정 기둥이 내가 심정 기둥이 내가 라단 스코메나 거기만 들려오지 선음만 들려오지 선음이 이제 나주기 최기 도와마지 도나 충분히 저들이 장님들도 되게 해야 돼. 준다라 보는 것도 롱단이로 와. 준다라 이제 유등이는 저 동원이 이 담배대 이 로조 다이르세 인가라만 냠냠이 로조다 바이리 단순 앞에 요새 로조 바이리 저 다이르세 로조다 사이 울라만 냠지 마지 대를 장소로 장소 가시미 디글라 또 담슈 다리오래 대는 장소로 집어 버리시면 돼 노르스 뭐가 양 하량 또 담아지라 양 하얀 야가 용으로 준다는 게 농대요로 와 농단도 제 용대요래.
And so the reason why the teachings of the Buddha diminishes or degenerates is because of the time, and of course because of the karma and the general karma of the sentient beings. So when the karma of the sentient beings to receive the teaching degenerates, then teaching also degenerates. So and the teaching also moves from place to place depending on where there are more people who show interest in the teaching of the Buddha. So it started from the central, which is like the India, and then from there it went it says it's going to go to the south, and then it went to south, and then it went then from there it's going to go to north, and so and it goes to and went up to the Kashmir, and then all the way and up to into Tibet. So the teachings of the Buddha flourishes through the places like that, and it says at the end it's going to come back, so at the end of the teachings, and it will come back to India again.
반전 할아버지다가 누구요래 야를 가십니다. 누구요래 소화요래. 그래서 그 힘이 가치기 하나 채시지. 반전 할아버지 소화는 채소요래. 반지 가지 하지 소화 좀 휴저래. 가지 다 그래. 대만에 다 부서 주세요. 대사대 여모도 제가 야기 번도서 있는데 버도 세도.
And so there in Kashmir there is a very big like a retreat cave where the great master Naropa did a lot of practice and so forth. So you can still see many pictures and portraits of Naropa there.
반지 나로바 배열에 반지 이모공 배열 반지 아까이나 요즘은 이모공 얘네 반지 나로바 얘네 또 여기로도 배우기도 여로도 바배 여는 배열로 연하나 저 연하게 되는 좀 transcendence 같은 게 다들도 되게 연하다 해서 들어 되는 뭐 되는 말이 연하지 연하로 말로 정도 기도 유니모 나이세요. 되는 말이 이제 벌어 맞다지 못할 정도 이거래.
So there are many great masters like Naropa and Dadul Nimakong, also who was there in Kashmir, and also many great translators who came there and spread the teachings there. And then later it went up to China. Then in China there are the great beings like Tangsang and so forth, so who practiced, and it stayed there for a long time. And after that, then it came to Tibet.
이제 배는 주어대로도 남부지다 영어로 배는 남과는 클래식 하는 해네 다른 비도 가지 노로지도 모르서 남과 컨트롤로서 그렇게 우르고서 되는 날에다로 모주도 날에다 버지 로종주의세래 날에다 캡차 지금 날에다 야 날에다 그러나 아다 평생이 나 강바주세요 제 고동고지 지고 그냥 좀 다른 데에 대해서
and this great scholar Tangsang from China, who went through many difficulties, to go to India, travel all the way to India, and went to Nalanda Monastery and studied there for 12 years. He says there's 12 years. He studied for 12 years and became a great scholar. And so nowadays you can see the ruins of the Nalanda Monastery in India, and they say there's this place, they say this is the room of the scholar Tangsang from China. So it spread a lot in China, because these scholars, they went to into India, they studied and they translated all these texts into China, and then they wrote into a scripture and then carried all the scripture all the way to China, and then flourished it there. So. And so the teaching of the Buddha was in China for a very long time, and then after a very long time, and it flourished in Tibet. But the teachings, went into Tibet straight from India. So, through the great teachers like Lama Tisha, Padmasambhava, and Shantarakshita, who were during the earlier part of the teachings, and earlier propagation or flourishing of the teachings, and then it degenerated, and then later it was again revived or reflourished, and at that time it was brought by Lama Tisha and so forth. And so it has flourished in Tibet for over 1,000 years, and then later it degenerated. And teachings have degenerated a lot, and that's all because of the sentient beings' general karma. Anyway, so His Holiness, was able to come, to India. He had to escape from Tibet, and was able to come to India. And then, because of His Holiness coming to India, then again teachings spread a lot, or flourished a lot in India. And then, from that, then it went to many different places, like here and so forth. That the teachings have flourished now.
이미 남아있고 이게 무슨 소 동안이 나와도 잡으시하러 로데리 잡아야지 로 리뷰를 잡아진 이 소다나 추해마요 뭐 저나 야고요래 다이는 타보토야서 뭐지 소지 동아지 고와 타야도 달라 애들이 그 판도 연구하러 봐 이제 인gem을 편도 남아있네 너무 많이 줄이 남아있는데 는 여름이지 가능한 거 최대 남이 최대라 최대 천만이 되죠. 그래서 천만이 더하던 데도 휴가가 파도잖아요. 그래서 수수치 시험에 수출이 최소치 내려오라고 나와야 집에 집어 내려와. 대만이 더하던 무다다는데도 파지 지금 아니냐고요. 그래서 가는 거. 너무 때문에
and so the knowledge about the emptiness, is very good to have for everybody, whether one is Buddhist or not. it is some, because it's all based on reasonings, right? So because because it's based on reasoning, so anybody can study, anybody can gain the knowledge about emptiness. So of course, if you're Buddhist, then of course it's really good, to have the knowledge about emptiness. But even if you're not Buddhist, still it's very, very helpful. And especially for Buddhists, in order to be free from cyclic existence, you have to have the knowledge of the realization of emptiness. But even if you're not Buddhist, then you can still study. Like His Holiness said, there are certain things that that is very unique, to each religion. But the other things that can be shared among the religions. So like the view, it can be studied among the religions. And so like in the teachings, there the view and the conduct part of the teachings. So the view of the emptiness, the interdependence, and then the conduct is loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta, and so forth. And like the view is not really taught in other religions, but about the loving kindness, compassion, and altruistic attitude, these are also taught in many other religions. And so the emptiness, is really important to realize. If one doesn't realize the emptiness, the view of the emptiness, which is only taught uniquely in the Buddhism, so one has to realize that. Without realizing that, there's no way one can be free from cyclic existence. So if one doesn't want to experience any sufferings, doesn't want to be in cyclic existence, then one has to realize the emptiness. And so emptiness is not taught straight into emptiness, and one is taught in many different ways to come to realize emptiness. There are many different reasonings, many different ways, many different schools of thoughts that are taught to realize emptiness. And so there are many different tenets, the schools of thoughts, like the Vaibhashikas and the Savatantrikas, Madhyamikas, and the Chittamatrins, and so forth. So there's the Hinayana schools and the Mahayana schools, and so forth. So all these are different ways of explaining about emptiness, or teaching about emptiness according to the dispositions of the students or disciples. So first you teach the grosser levels, and then make it subtler and subtler, and then come to the subtlest point of the emptiness.
담에 차라 담에 때는 차와다 담에 라고 담에 차고 수대도 동원이 담에 가다도 동이 켜고 있어 담에 동이 더 이些담에는 차라 먹지 동이는 차라 먹지 뭐 무슨데 네 왕이 이제 담에 이제 이제 강가 카도 세라고 하면 이제 뭐 기여다.
And so there are many different level of the selflessness, the subtle and the gross levels of selflessness, and same with the emptiness. There's a subtle and a gross level of emptinesses. You can't go and teach straight into the subtle level. And first you have to teach. You will see according to the dispositions or the mentalities of the disciples and the students, and then according to them, then you teach what is best suitable for them.
탑 기초도 탑 망고 탑 사부가치. 동물은 돈이 더 좋아지 동물은 이제 라우리 셰 그런 거 그걸 현지 셰 근데 야들은 야야 지도다 그들이 더 되게 되시고 오늘 제 담아지 되게 좋고 되게 이거
There's all many different ways, because the Buddha is very skillful, skillful and has many methods, and so teaches in many different ways to come to realize. So of course, first it doesn't go straight into the subtle emptiness, but first start with the gross level of emptiness, and then eventually to the subtlest the emptiness, the emptiness according to the Sankhya Mother Buddhist view. And so the purpose of realizing emptiness or studying about emptiness and coming to realize about emptiness is not, it should be to achieve liberation, to be free from cyclic existence, not just to gain the knowledge, but to achieve liberation and to be free from all the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, death, and so forth, and to achieve a state of full enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Since we all have the Buddha nature, the potential to become Buddha, and so we can become Buddha, but in order to become that, we have to realize emptiness. So the realization of the purpose of realizing emptiness should be to achieve liberation or enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And not thinking about this life, not thinking about the professions of the cycle existence, but rather thinking about achieving enlightenment, or achieving liberation, not only for oneself alone, but for all the sentient beings, equal to the infinite space. And so for their sake, one should realize, one should achieve enlightenment, and for that one should study or realize emptiness. So if we study or meditate or practice the emptiness, in order to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, then that becomes a good reason, good motivation to do the practice.
So when you say autology, there is some danger. So much then can you now? So much can you know? So there is 대종산 동의디 아니 얘들이 여기 만면서 되니 대종산이야 고압에 휴는 오래 고압이 고압에 단수 고압이 많아도 판도도 시작하고 동의 또 도지 모두 뭐 하시는 동안 근데 얘들이 여기 있는데 이만한 member서 너들이 많아서 너들이 또 막 요나야 시바디 수고지 고압에 그 못하게 쓰고
So even if one doesn't realize emptiness, but even if one just have a doubt about emptiness, a random thought about emptiness, and if you say, oh, what is emptiness? I wonder what is emptiness. Maybe it's like this, maybe it's like that. So just having a thought, a random thought, or a doubt about emptiness, and so even that will tremble, the cycle existence, and so that all lives imprinted in one's mind, to be free from cycle existence. And so just by having that thought about emptiness, that will destroy the cycle existence. And so just like if there is a bugs or insects on the cloth or on the food, then it will not be useful at all, right? So it makes like that to the cycle existence. If there is a rain or sun for a very long time on the cloth will be of no use, and so it will make the cycle existence become like that.
야 다다 말이야 뭐로 해야 되가 요래 송광이는 야다네 진짜 요마 자루들이 라라고라들이 이게 용수지 대자지 다다 맛있나 난 얘기가 요래.
So in one hand, it is very useful, very powerful, very useful. But on the other hand, one has to be very careful about it because if one misunderstands it, then one may fall into the wrong direction, into the bad direction, and to the wrong direction, into nihilism. Because here it talks a lot about emptiness or non-existence. So what kind of thing doesn't exist? So one has to know that. Otherwise, if one thinks the things that exist and doesn't exist, then that's wrong, right?
동광이나 따이나 실어주는 공항이사. 동광이나 따가 마시나 실어 중어도 풍루다스. 근데 눌러서 나와서는 속에로. 둘이 같이 먹고 모두 실전 속에 세세로. 따가 오고 마시나? 그리고 얘가 요 제대로 하니까 요. 근데 여기서 와서 눌러서 나와서 제가 차거든요.
And so it is said that if one doesn't know how to look at emptiness in a correct way, then those with a lesser wisdom or intelligence might be deprived. So what it means is that if you don't look in a correct way, and then see in a correct way, then there's a danger of falling into the extreme of nihilism. And so it is said that the analogy that used to realize emptiness is just like trying to catch a poisonous snake. So if you don't know how to catch the poisonous snake, if you don't catch it in the right way, then there's a danger of being bitten and killed. And so it's very similar to that.
넘어서야 더 여러분들 넘어서 내뉴송으로 내가 내리죠 송어들이 진중스 데리터 봤어요. 데리셔야 돼. 넘어서야 더 데리 용어. 동방이 용어라 데리는 신고와. 초강도 가이는 유래들이 좋아. 대 많이 나들이 그게 좀 뭐지 저 유에 난거도 신나니. 소니다 뭐 봐 그래도 용어래. 진용은要求돼 데리 좋아. 유래들이 너무 좋아. 내 요월에는 이제 너무 더워. 나도 미겨는 너무 용서. 대나지게 되지. 대나자 야고 싫을 되지. 대리면에 시험도 랑지나 봐. 랑이 뭐뭐 이제는 뜨고 이제는 호랑랑세 랑세미 들어 미미들이 축간다 가이네. 다시도 뭐지게 또도 뭐지를 때주고로 규단 kiến다 뭐지 손으로 거대. 이제는 뒤용도 호랑랑세 미미들이 호랑랑랑랑좀 들이 이제 나도 되요.
And so the emptiness is all about interdependence. So that's what we're going to discuss further about it in the praise of interdependent rising. It's all about interdependence. And so because it is dependent rising, therefore it has to depend on something. So therefore it doesn't exist from its own side and by itself or inherently. And so just like how the result depends on the cause and conditions and so forth, and how the result, suffering result, comes from the non-virtuous action and a cause, then the non-virtuous actions, and then the happiness coming from the virtuous actions. And so when we realize that, then we come to realize, when we realize that it all depends on cause and condition and something, then we realize that it doesn't exist inherently, by itself from its own side. And so the emptiness is all about how all these things exist by depending on cause and conditions and so forth.
근데 지난 정부는 나라는 하고 그러고 정부는 동화 다용도 이사들은 다용도 초지 얘기 쉬도 되고 예 차리기 더 얘기 쉬우지 기록 얘기 쉬도 되고 나도 노래를 다를 때도 계속 초지에 당연히다 투매지네 저는 오제들이야 가만히도 그대야 뭐도 되고 뭐 오르냐도 그때 사유가야도 그때 주로야도 그때 둘이 오실 때도 내가 그 유행 내용도 이거고 유배 부서에 야가지고 누구 야로 거리 위에 이제 돈 논도도 하고 얘가 좀 되는 거래.
So even looking at the and the situations of the world now, there are so many so many developments in this world, right? So many good things have been built and so forth. But then again, and so all this all comes from the cause and conditions. But again, also on the other hand, there are so many things that brings those development again brings other bad conditions like that causes the one to have the earthquakes, the floods and so forth. So all this happens by depending on cause and conditions.
얘는 떠버리잖아. 호랑이형 두고 뭐 롱 차도래. 양이 그리지는 도 지나 야가이네. 그 빌어들 뭐지 떠버리잖아. 유디 제가 지단이 머리다. 지가 저리 머리들이 귀야 지금 뭐 호라라 지도 거기 되고. 이제 호라랑 두고 말.
So it all depends on the cause and conditions, right? So by depending on so and so, then it comes into existence. So when it depends on something, then it shows that it doesn't exist on its own by itself. So whether it's a good or bad, everything has and depends on something for it to arise.
그냥 시계 치고 예를 들면 뭐 뜨고 시행이 고래. 나 화성 고래. 시부지 되고 시행이 고체. 화성은 다시 뭐지 뭐 되게 시계 되고.
And also, for many developments to happen in this world, and it has to depend on many causes and conditions, many external and internal causes and conditions, right? Many, it has to depend on the knowledge, and also many of these external facilities, for one to be able to build all these things.
그냥 말아서 미 경고도 지, 이제 야랑 도움이도나, 그야 그거 때 시간이 고래, 개발 그걸 가도록 오면도. 그 나와디 아니 로바지고 그래 야미지 뒤에서다 나와대야로 된 거도 와 여고랑 라서 호랑수 두고 말고 호랑아 영어 호랑 라수 두고 말는데 되어서라기도 이거는 뭐 미경고 민나버도 버들이 이제는 뜨고 가지고 호랑 용도 왔어 그러는 데랑 와요 말이 대대랑 와요 말이 호랑 또 이제 또
So just like an old person or sick person has to depend on others, for him or her to do anything, right? And so the old person is not able to stand up, so he has to either depend on somebody who's helping him, or some kind of device or stick and so forth. Depend on that, and he needs to stand up. So it has to depend on that, and so it's the same with the person who is sick. Can't do all the things by himself or herself, so has to depend on others to do things. So that's the dependence.
그냥 저는 얘기해야 되나 이거 지나 버틀이 하고 근데 이제 또는 뭐도 없어야겠는데 이제 또는 뭐도지 아무리 해야
and for things to go well in the country, for things to develop and go well, it has to depend on the harmony of the people in that country, right? In the community and so forth. So it has to depend. Without that, there's no way that things can develop, right?
그래서 미미미스도 이제 봐줘야 돼요. 시행해야 되고 다 그게 뭐지나 또고 저 강다가 또는 로가 되겠다. 로스페야 돼 하고 랑원을 모르지. 랑원을 모르고 돈이 더 쓰고 다시 돈이 있으세요. 랑신이 모르고 랑원을 모르고 해야 돼 지금.
And so the increasing of the wealth, the increase of the knowledge and wisdom and so forth, and it also depends on others, right? And so everything has to depend on others, and so therefore it doesn't exist from its one side, and it doesn't exist by itself. And so when you understand that it depends on others, and then understanding that it doesn't exist from its one side becomes easier.
겨울이 가나도 저 사리로 개발되시도 사리로 개발되기 모두 사리기 나라 때내서 해야지 되게 오만했어. 당연히 되게 오만했어. 근데 당연히 다 오만이지. 이냥 시행용도 된지 영향이 요랬어. 거기 된 거는 이제 가리는 배 무슨 뭐 사고야, 무슨 뭐 누구야 그러고 된지 지금 뭐 소원 누구 때문에 갈린 거였어. 근데 민마다 뭐도 된지 고월에서 시행되고 개발했어.
And His Holiness says that the scientists don't use the word dependent arising, but but they accept that the things has to come into things come in existence by depending on many cause and conditions, by depending on many cause and conditions of parts and particles and so forth. Then things come to existence. They accept that, but that they don't use the word dependent rising. And so this in praise of the dependent rising, the text is all about dependent origination. So this is the best method, and so the one of the best method or means to realize emptiness is to understand dependent origination. So this the explanation about the emptiness here in this text is very profound. So it's really difficult to understand, and I myself don't know much about it. But just we'll say just a little bit so that it doesn't become empty. And so this text, in praise of dependent rising, is composed by Lama Tsongkhapa. So it starts with the word Namo Guru Menju Gokhaya. So if you look at the text or the handout that you have on this teaching, so I brought to you the triumphant Buddha, who has seen and taught dependent rising, which to see makes you a knower, and to speak of makes you an unsurpassable instructor. And so whatever things there are, whether it is worldly things or trans-worldly things, whether it's Buddhist or non-Buddhist, whatever it is, so seeing that as dependent rising, seeing that everything. So in short, everything that exists, seeing everything that exists as dependent rising, not only seeing that, but who knows and who teaches that, is the Buddha. That's what it's saying in short. And so it's here it says like the unsurpassable instructor, and there's also another one that's unsurpassable knower. And so because he sees it, therefore he's an unsurpassable knower. And because he teaches or he speaks about it, therefore he is unsurpassable instructor. And so the one who sees it and teaches to others, to that I make prostration, or I bow down to you.
And
so that part is the homage. That the first verse is the homage, and then in the second one, which is unawareness, unawareness or the ignorance is the root of as much torment as there are in this world. So whatever torments or problems in this world is all because of the ignorance. So whatever torments, whatever problems, destructions there are in this world, is all because of it all comes, from ignorance, from not knowing the reality. And so all the problems in this world, all the personal problems or the general problems, of the public, and all the problems that we have of the disease, of the earthquakes, the wars, and everything. All these problems in this world, comes, from the ignorance or unawareness or ignorance, not knowing the reality, not knowing what really things are, what things are really are, and because of that, then we get into all these problems. And then says, thus you spoke of independent rising, which if seen turns that back. And so it's like, it's all the problems comes from not realizing emptiness. But if you realize emptiness, then that will all be gone. All that will turn that back, means that it will all be stopped. All the problems in this world will be stopped if you realize emptiness. So it's like Buddha said, if you don't realize emptiness, you will not be free from cyclism. And in order to realize emptiness, and then he taught many different ways, many different methods, to realize emptiness. So this is all about it. And then in the third verse, it says, at that time, how could those with intelligence not have comprehended the path of dependent rising, and as being the essential point of your teachings? And so those who wishes, to be free from cyclicity, who wants to create a cause, for happiness, abandon the cause for the sufferings, has to understand emptiness. How can one not understand emptiness? Without that, there's no way one can achieve all these happinesses and be free from the suffering of cyclic existence. And so Buddha has taught, it said that Buddha has taught 84 hips of doctrine, 84,000 hips of doctrine. And all these doctrines that Buddha taught, the teachings that Buddha gave, the essence of all this teaching is emptiness, it's dependent rising. So everything that we want to achieve, all the sufferings that we want to be free from, all the happiness that we want to achieve, it all depends on realizing the interdependence or dependent rising, emptiness.
대단한 원효라 또배우는 수익이 대단하나 원효라 또배우는 수익이 되는 경우 송화라 원사기와 지징에 대인자나 계란을 두 번이나 내가 좀 말하지 대바이나 대바도 그바이니 두 번이나 되는 송화도 또고도 되는 송화들라서 저는 두 번이야기 풀고 어바 또 배우러 대바다 인데 연된 주기도나 때래 또 배우기도나 이제마 반 라고 말해 대인 여와 영화 송화들라니 또 보면 휴지에 셈들라나 네 오래 송화지 대단한 원기로 또 배우는 수직이 되는 영화 송화라고 저기 지유 그래서 송모 요하는데 뭐 예배 나는 된종은 니래 하고바지 소녀 사람이 도세요
And so if you want to praise the Buddha, and if you have a faith in Buddha, and you see all these qualities in Buddha, and you praise him, and so the reason why you want to praise to him can be just because he taught emptiness. So because he taught the emptiness, so therefore you can praise to him. So because of that reason, so he has taught many teachings, many different teachings. Like I said, 84,000 hips of doctrine. All these teachings, the essence one, is the emptiness. Essence of all these teachings, emptiness. So because he taught emptiness or dependent rising, therefore he is praiseworthy.
강강 유칸당 유 최소한 가리지냐 걔는 알아봐 강이면 대단한데 라지가 동생이랬어 라지가 동생이야 라야 말 고라 얘는 또 이제 랑이 뭐 라수 못 줬어 랑이 앞에 요 말했어 라지 기도요 송원 딜레 야선빌레도지 티비 뭐서 휴지를 쓴 거야 최대 때는 좀 인시도 랑원을 말로 랑식이 말로 세디 휴가고도 왔어.
And so that was in the verse 4, right? As that is so, how could anyone find as a gateway for praising you, O Garden, anything more wondrous than your statement about independent rising? And then in the verse 5 it says, whatever depends on condition is devoid of a self-establishing nature. And so that means because it depends on cause and condition, therefore it shows that it doesn't exist by itself from its own side, because it has to depend on cause and conditions.
송원들의 예상을 지휘 거기가 견나라라 봐 되더라지 거기가 견나라라 봐 되지 가지 견나라 되더라지 송 어다니 지휘 강도 송의 기반은 단위경과 단계봐 되니나 좀 마시나 최대 너로 도망이든 마시나 이거 친구 그러지 강도 송의 견능이 너로 도망이 마시마치 랑원은 좀 진송나 아니 야미 다다롱 그랬어 야미 다다롱 그랬어 야미 지 돈이 고로 받잖아 동생 사람이 돈다는데 요 말에서 랍시나 다다롱도 랑이 요래는 다다롱도 랑이 좀 다다롱 그랬어 단은 매는 다다롱 그랬어 랑이 단은 매다 단은 랑식이 매버 단은 매버 단은 랑식이 요 말이지 예서라고 그랬어 랑식이 여보다 단은 가이나 랑식이 요나 랑식이 여보다 다다롱으로 그랬어 많이 매제 지다는 거지. 그래서 또 말이지.
And so what could be a more amazing and excellent manner of instruction than this statement, the statement of the dependent rising, and it says in this real fact, which is which if grasp at establishing true existence, and so if we so you have to realize emptiness in order to be free from cyclic existence. So what makes one to be in cyclic existence is grasping at the inherent existence. So if you grasp at inherent existence, so it says it exists inherently, then you are falling into the extreme of eternalism. And if you say because if you say if it doesn't exist at all because it's empty, it doesn't exist at all, then you fall into the extreme of nihilism.
실제 때는 유익이 생기 때는 좋아다 라지 동안이 망가와 거지 때는 좋아다 라지 동안이 배 거매 봐 신도도나 네 동이 동그래스.
And so makes the infantile beings in bondage to grasping for extreme more forms. So extremes are the two extremes, the extreme of nihilism and the extreme of eternalism, and it's the gateway for the learner to cut all the webs of their mental fabrication without any exception. So when you realize the dependent rising and an empty of inherent state, then that then you have come to realize the emptiness.
랑은 좋아다 따나면 받다다 다자 도는 거예요. 돈이 또 손나 다자 다 신도 라지 동화사야 돼. 때는
realize emptiness is understanding the dependent rising of the phenomena. So if one says things things are not dependent rising, then there's no way to realize emptiness. And even if you say things are things are dependent rising, but they exist inherently, then again becomes difficult to realize emptiness. So we stop here for today. So we'll continue tomorrow from the rest of the text.